I never thought my own sister would be the reason I almost lost everything. If you had asked me 3 years ago who I trusted most in the world, I would have said her name without hesitation. Emily, my big sister, my protector, my best friend. But the night I found out what she had done, something inside me broke in a way I don't think will ever fully heal. My name is Rachel. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how my family betrayed me and how I had to rebuild my life from nothing. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. Nothing fancy, just quiet streets, Friday night football games, and the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows your business before you do. My dad worked construction. My mom was a nurse. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. We had stability, or at least that's what I believed. Emily was 3 years older than me. Growing up, she was everything I wanted to be. Confident, popular, beautiful without trying. Teachers loved her. Boys followed her around. Even migrants seemed to glow when they talked about her. Emily is going places, my mom would say. I wasn't jealous. Not then. I adored her. When I was 10, she was the one who walked me to school after I got bullied. When I was 12, she taught me how to do my makeup before my first school dance. When I cried over my first heartbreak at 16, she sat on my bed and told me I deserved better. She always said, no matter what happens, it's you and me. And I believed her. After high school, Emily left for college in Chicago. I stayed closer to home and went to a state university. She studied business. I studied marketing. She always aimed higher. Bigger city, bigger dreams. When she graduated, she moved to New York. That's when I started noticing changes. She sounded different on the phone. Sharper, more impatient, less interested in my life. But I told myself that's what ambition looks like. Meanwhile, I met Daniel. Daniel was steady, calm, the kind of man who remembers your coffee order and shows up when he says he will. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue. He worked in tech, had just launched a small startup with 2 friends, and had this quiet determination about him. He wasn't flashy, like the guys Emily dated. He didn't drive a sports car or post photos from rooftop bars, but he made me feel safe. We dated for 4 years before he proposed. The night he asked me to marry him, he did it in our tiny apartment kitchen while I was in sweatpants, complaining about work. He got down on one knee anyway. I said yes before he even finished his sentence. When I called Emily to tell her, she screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Oh my God, Ratch. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. She flew in for the engagement party. She hugged Daniel like he was already her brother. She told everyone how proud she was of me. Looking back, I wonder how much of that was real. 2 years later, Daniel's startup exploded. I mean, really exploded. They landed a massive contract with a national retail chain. Investors came in. Within a year, the company was valued in the millions. Our life changed fast. We moved into a modern house outside Columbus. Nothing over the top, but beautiful. Clean lines, big windows, a kitchen I used to see only in magazines. Daniel bought me a car. I quit my corporate marketing job and started freelancing from home. We weren't just comfortable anymore. We were wealthy. And that's when Emily started calling more often. At first, I thought she just wanted to reconnect. She would ask about the house, about the company, about investments. How much is the company worth now? She'd ask casually. Are you diversified? Do you have someone managing your assets? It sounded like sisterly interest. One night during a visit, we were sitting in my backyard with wine, and she said something that stuck with me. You're lucky, you know. I laughed. Lucky? Yeah. You married the right guy at the right time. Most people don't get that. Something about the way she said it didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like calculation. A few months later, she told me she was thinking about leaving her job in New York. She said she was burnt out. That corporate life wasn't fulfilling. I want something more meaningful, she said. Daniel immediately offered to help. We're expanding, he told her. We could use someone with your background. You'd be perfect in operations. I hesitated, not because I didn't trust her, but because mixing family and business can be messy. Emily squeezed my hand. "You don't trust me?" That question hit me like a slap. "Of course I trust you," I said. And that was the moment everything started unraveling. She moved to Ohio within 3 months. Daniel made her chief operations officer. It sounded impressive, and it paid extremely well. At first, everything seemed fine. She worked long hours. She impressed the team. She streamlined processes. Daniel praised her constantly. "You were right," he told me one night. "She's brilliant." But slowly things shifted. Daniel started coming home later. He said he and Emily were working on expansion plans. When I'd walk into his home office, he'd quickly minimize whatever was on his screen. "Just projections," he'd say. Emily stopped coming over for casual dinners. If we saw her, it was always business-related. One afternoon, I showed up at the office to surprise Daniel with lunch. The receptionist looked confused. "Oh, he's in a meeting," she said. "With who?" She hesitated. "With Emily." I smiled. "Of course." But when I walked toward the conference room, I heard raised voices. Emily's voice was sharp. "She doesn't need to know everything, Daniel." My heart skipped. Daniel replied, "She's my wife. And I'm protecting the company," she snapped. I froze outside the door. Protecting it from who? From me? I didn't go in. I left quietly, my hands shaking. That night, I asked Daniel about it. He brushed it off. "Just stress," he said. "We're negotiating a new deal. Emily's intense, that's all." But something in his eyes had changed. Distance. Guilt. Or maybe fear. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing small things. Mail addressed only to Daniel that I wasn't allowed to open. Bank notifications that didn't match our usual accounts. Emily texting him late at night. When I asked, he'd say, "It's just business." But then I found the first real crack. It was a Saturday morning. Daniel was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to snoop. I swear I wasn't. But her name popped up. Emily. The message preview read, "We need to move it before she finds out." My entire body went cold. Move what? Find out what? I stood there staring at the screen, my reflection pale in the black glass. In that moment, something deep inside me knew. This wasn't just business. This wasn't just stress. This was betrayal. And I was the only one who didn't know the full story yet. I didn't confront him right away. I wish I could say I was brave, that I stormed into the bathroom and demanded answers. But I didn't. Instead, I put the phone back exactly where it was and sat down at the kitchen table like nothing had happened. My hands were trembling so badly, I had to grip the edge of the chair. "We need to move it before she finds out." Those words replayed in my head over and over. Move what? Money? Assets? Shares? And why would my own sister talk about me like I was a threat? Daniel came downstairs 20 minutes later, towel around his neck, smiling like it was just another normal Saturday. "Morning, babe." I studied his face, searching for cracks. "Morning," I said carefully. He poured coffee, kissed my forehead, completely calm. That calm scared me more than anything. For the rest of the weekend, I acted normal. I laughed when I was supposed to laugh. I nodded when he talked about work. But inside, something had shifted permanently. I started paying attention. On Monday morning, after Daniel left for the office, I logged into our joint bank account. Everything looked normal at first glance. Mortgage payments, utilities, investments. But then I noticed a transfer I didn't recognize. $200,000. It had been moved 3 weeks ago into a separate LLC account. An LLC I had never heard of. My stomach dropped. Daniel and I had always been transparent about money. Always. When the company started growing, we sat down with financial advisors together. Every major decision was discussed. So, why didn't I know about this? I clicked into our investment dashboard. That's when I saw something else. My ownership percentage in the company had changed. I blinked. I refreshed the page. It hadn't been 50% anymore. It was 35. 35. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. When Daniel launched the company, I had invested my inheritance from our grandmother into it. $100,000. It was almost everything I had at the time. We agreed from the beginning that we were equal partners. Even if I wasn't involved in daily operations, half was mine. So, how did it become 35? There was a digital document attached, an amendment, signed electronically, with my name on it. But I never signed it. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine. It had to be copied from something official. My vision blurred. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was fraud. And the only person who had access to those documents besides Daniel was Emily. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I printed everything. Every transaction. Every amendment. Every suspicious transfer. By the time Daniel got home that evening, I had a folder sitting on the kitchen table. He walked in, loosened his tie, and froze when he saw my face. "What's wrong?" I slid the folder toward him. "Explain this." He didn't touch it at first. Then slowly, he opened it. I watched the color drain from his face. "It's not what you think," he said immediately. That sentence. The universal anthem of guilty people. "Then tell me what it is," I replied. He rubbed his forehead. "Emily suggested restructuring. For tax purposes. Liability protection. It's complicated. Complicated enough to forge my signature?" His head snapped up. "No one forged anything." "Then why does this document say I agreed to reduce my ownership?" Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, he said quietly, "It was temporary." "Temporary? You stole from me," I whispered. His voice hardened. "I didn't steal. I protected the company. From me." "You don't understand how exposed we were," he snapped. "If something happened, if you got sued, if anything went wrong, we could lose everything. So, you decided to cut me out?" "That's not what I did." "Then what did you do?" He didn't answer. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just financial restructuring. This was premeditated. That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel tried to come into the bedroom, but I locked the door. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. "Emily." I almost didn't answer, but I did.
Her voice was calm. Too calm.
"So, you found out." There it was. No pretending.
"Why?"
I asked. She sighed like I was being dramatic. "Rachel, you were never built for this level of money." I felt something inside me shatter. What does that even mean? It means you're emotional. You're naive. Daniel needs someone strategic at his side, not someone who cries over spreadsheets. My chest tightened. "You're my sister. I'm trying to protect what we built."
"We."
I repeated. "Yes, we." I turned that company into what it is now. Without me, it would still be a small startup. I realized then that in her mind, she truly believed this. "You forged my signature." It was a technicality. It was illegal. She laughed softly. "Are you going to sue your own husband? Your own sister? Think about the headlines." She wasn't wrong. Public scandal would destroy the company's valuation overnight. And the transfer? I asked. "What transfer?" 200,000 into an LLC. Another pause. That's contingency planning. For what? For expansion. Under whose name? Silence again. And that silence told me everything. The LLC wasn't under Daniel's name. It wasn't under the company's name. It was under hers. "You planned this," I whispered. "Don't be dramatic. You planned to push me out." "No," she said coldly. "I planned for survival." I ended the call because if I stayed on the line, I was going to break. The next morning, I drove to a lawyer's office. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't tell anyone. I brought every document I had printed. The attorney, a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense, reviewed everything carefully. "This is serious," she said. "Serious how?" "If what you're telling me is accurate, this is fraud. Potentially criminal." My heart pounded. "And the ownership change?" "If you didn't sign it knowingly, it's invalid." Relief mixed with dread. But here's the problem, she continued. If you pursue this legally, it becomes public record. Investors will panic. The company will be investigated. It could collapse. Exactly what Emily had warned me about. So what do I do? The lawyer leaned back. You decide what matters more. The marriage, the business, or yourself. I drove home in silence. When I pulled into the driveway, Emily's car was already there. Of course it was. I walked inside and found them both at the kitchen island, like a united front. Daniel stood up. We need to talk. Emily stayed seated, arms crossed,
Composed.
I looked at them and felt like an outsider in my own home. Daniel spoke first. We can fix this. We just need to adjust expectations. Adjust expectations? I repeated. Emily finally spoke. You can keep your 35%. It's still worth millions. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. As if that was the point. This isn't about the money, I said. Emily tilted her head. It's always about the money. And in that moment, I realized something devastating.
She didn't just betray me.
She never saw me as an equal, not as a partner,
Not even as family.
just an obstacle. And that was the moment I made a decision that would change all of our lives forever. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't beg. Instead, I did something that terrified them more. I got quiet. I need time, I said calmly. Daniel looked relieved. Emily looked suspicious. Time for what? She asked. To think. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look at her like she was my big sister. I looked at her like she was my enemy. That night, I packed a small suitcase and told Daniel I was staying with a friend.
He didn't argue.
That hurt more than if he had. I drove to a hotel instead. I needed space. I needed clarity. And most of all, I needed to stop being the emotional one they expected me to be. If they thought I was naive, they were about to learn something new about me. The next morning, I called the lawyer again. I want to dig deeper, I told her. She didn't hesitate. Then we do this properly. Over the next week, we requested internal financial records through legal channels. As a shareholder, I had rights. Rights Emily clearly hoped I didn't understand. What we found made the forged signature look small. There wasn't just one LLC. There were 3, all created within the past 8 months. All connected to contracts that had originally belonged to Daniel's company.
And all controlled by Emily.
But here's the part that made my stomach twist. Daniel's name was on 2 of them. Not as primary owner. As secondary. Minority. My husband hadn't just reduced my shares. He had reduced his own. Why would he do that? The lawyer leaned across her desk. This looks like asset diversion. In English, I asked. They're siphoning revenue away from the main company into private entities. Why? She studied me carefully, possibly preparing for a separation. My chest tightened. Separation from who? From you. The room felt smaller. You think this is divorce planning? It looks like it. I drove back to the hotel in a fog.
Divorce.
No one had said that word out loud. Not Daniel. Not Emily. But the more I replayed the last year in my head, the more it made sense. The late nights. The secrecy. The ownership changes. The emotional distance. They weren't protecting the company. They were protecting themselves.
From me.
That evening, I did something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator. I hated myself for even considering it, but I needed the truth. All of it. Within 5 days, I had it. And it was worse than fraud. Much worse. The investigator called me personally. Are you somewhere private? He asked. Yes. There was a pause. I've been monitoring communications between your husband and your sister. My hands went cold. They're in constant contact, not just business hours. I closed my eyes. Be specific. They've been meeting outside the office. Hotels, restaurants, private residences. My throat burned. Are you saying there? Yes. The word hung in the air like poison. They weren't just business partners. They were having an affair. For at least 6 months. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I asked the question that mattered most. Does anyone else know? No evidence of that, he replied. They've been discreet. Of course they had. Calculated. Strategic. Careful. That night, I finally broke. I cried until my chest hurt. Not just because my husband was sleeping with my sister, but because I realized something even more painful. They had probably bonded over pushing me out, over replacing me, over convincing themselves I was weak. I thought back to every dinner where Emily had complimented Daniel a little too much. Every time he had defended her when I questioned something. Every time she told me I was too emotional. They weren't protecting the company. They were building something together. Without me. The next morning, I stopped crying. And I started planning. If they wanted a strategic player,
Fine.
I would give them one. First, I opened a separate bank account in my name only. Then, I contacted our investors. Not to accuse anyone, just to ask questions. Casual questions. Have there been any structural changes I should know about? The reactions were immediate.
Confused.
Concerned. One investor said something that made everything click. We assumed you approved the spin-off entities. Spin-off entities. So this wasn't secret from everyone. It was secret from me. I asked for documentation. He sent it within the hour. Board meeting minutes.
Votes.
Approvals. My name listed as present. My signature included. But I had never attended those meetings. I had never signed those documents. They had been manufacturing consent. That's when I realized something powerful. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a pattern, a criminal one. I drove back to the house unannounced. Emily's car was there again. Of course it was. I walked in without knocking. They were in the kitchen, standing too close. When they saw me, they stepped apart instantly. Guilty reflex. I didn't yell. I placed a thick stack of printed emails and LLC filings on the counter. Then I added the investigators' photos. Hotel entrances. Late-night meetings. A kiss captured in grainy but undeniable clarity. Daniel went pale. Emily didn't. She just stared at me. You hired someone, she said. Yes. Daniel looked like he might pass out. It's not what it looks like, he whispered. I laughed. Actually laughed. That line again? Emily's voice turned cold. You're overreacting. Overreacting. I repeated. You're sleeping with my husband. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said something that will stay with me forever. He chose me. The cruelty in those 3 words was surgical. Daniel tried to speak, but I held up my hand.
No.
You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify. I looked at Emily. You didn't just betray me. You tried to erase me. Silence filled the kitchen. Then she said quietly, you were never strong enough for this world. And in that moment, something inside me shifted permanently. Not sadness. Not heartbreak. Clarity. You made one mistake, I said calmly. She raised an eyebrow. You underestimated me. I picked up my folder. I'm filing a criminal complaint. Daniel's knees almost buckled. You can't, he said. You'll destroy everything. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't recognize this man anymore. You already destroyed everything, I replied. And I walked out. The criminal complaint was filed on a Tuesday morning. I didn't tell them beforehand. I didn't warn them. I let them find out the same way I did through documents. By Wednesday afternoon, Daniel was calling nonstop. I didn't answer. By Thursday, investors were demanding an emergency board meeting. By Friday, the company's legal team was in full crisis mode. Fraud allegations tend to do that. My lawyer moved fast. She filed claims for forged signatures, misrepresentation of ownership, and diversion of corporate assets. When Daniel was served papers at the office, I'm told he looked stunned. Emily, on the other hand, asked for a copy and immediately started making calls.
Of course she did.
Damage control. That evening, Daniel finally showed up at the hotel. I almost didn't let him in, but I needed to hear what he had to say. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, tie loose, shoulders heavy. "You're blowing this up," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "You did." He ran his hands through his hair. "We can settle this privately." "You mean quietly?" He didn't deny it. "Rachel, please. The investors are panicking. If this goes public, we could lose millions."
We.
I asked calmly. He flinched. "I never wanted to hurt you." I laughed softly. "You reduced my ownership. You forged my signature. You moved money into side companies. And you slept with my sister." He closed his eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen." That's what people say when they mean it happened repeatedly. "For how long?" I asked. He hesitated. 8 months. 8 months. 8 months of dinners, holidays, birthdays. 8 months of lies. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" I asked. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. The board meeting happened the next morning. I attended virtually with my lawyer beside me. Emily sat at the long polished table next to Daniel. She looked composed.
Polished.
Controlled. If someone didn't know the truth, they'd think she was the victim. One of the investors spoke first. "Rachel, these are serious accusations." "Yes," I said. "They are." Emily leaned forward. "This is a misunderstanding fueled by personal issues." "Personal issues." I smiled slightly. "Then let's stick to the financial records." My lawyer presented the forensic review. The forged signatures. The asset transfers. The LLC structures diverting revenue streams. The room went quiet. One investor removed his glasses slowly. "Emily," he said carefully, "did you authorize these entities?" "Yes," she replied confidently, "for strategic expansion. Without full board transparency." She didn't blink. It was time-sensitive. Then my lawyer dropped the final document, an email chain between Emily and Daniel, discussing how to minimize Rachel's exposure before filing. Before filing. Divorce filing. Daniel went pale. Emily didn't move. One investor turned to Daniel. "Were you planning a divorce?" Silence. And that silence did more damage than any accusation. The emergency vote happened within the hour. Emily was suspended immediately pending investigation. Daniel was temporarily removed from financial authority. I regained provisional control of my full 50% until the matter was legally resolved. For the first time in months, I felt steady. But Emily wasn't done. Not even close. 2 days later, the media picked up the story. Tech startup faces internal fraud allegations. They didn't mention the affair.
Yet.
But rumors spread fast. Friends started texting me. Family members started calling. And then my mother called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Her voice was shaky. "What is happening?" I swallowed. "You should ask Emily." Long silence. "She says you're trying to destroy her career." I closed my eyes. "She forged my signature. She slept with my husband." My mother gasped. "That's not what she said." Of course it wasn't. "What did she say?" I asked. "That you've been unstable. That the money changed you. That you've been paranoid for months." The strategy was clear. Discredit me. Paint me as emotional. Unhinged. It would have worked once, but not anymore. "Mom," I said calmly, "there are documents. There's proof. This isn't a fight. It's fraud." She started crying. "I just want my daughters back."
So did I.
But the sister I had growing up? She was gone. If she ever truly existed at all. That night, I received a notification. Emily had filed a counterclaim. Against me. Defamation. Emotional distress. Attempted corporate sabotage. I stared at the screen in disbelief. She wasn't defending herself. She was attacking. My lawyer called within minutes. "She's trying to intimidate you," she said. "Classic pressure tactic." "Will it work?" "Only if you fold." I didn't fold.
But I won't lie.
There were moments I wanted to. Moments at 2 a.m. when I questioned everything. Was I overreacting? Was I ruining everyone's lives? But then I'd remember the message. We need to move it before she finds out. I wasn't crazy. I was late to the truth. A week later, the forensic audit uncovered something no one expected. One of the LLCs had taken out a loan, using projected company revenue as leverage, without full board approval. If that loan defaulted, it could legally entangle the parent company. Emily hadn't just diverted money. She had risked collapsing everything. When confronted, she claimed it was aggressive scaling. But the investors weren't convinced anymore. And Daniel? He looked like a man realizing too late who he had aligned himself with. That evening, he called me again. I didn't know about the loan, he said. Are you sure? I asked. I swear. For the first time, I almost believed him. Almost. Then he said something that erased the sympathy. She said it was temporary.
She said.
He was still defending her. Even now. You chose her, I said quietly. I made a mistake. No, I replied. You made a decision. And decisions have consequences. By the end of the month, formal investigations were underway. Emily's reputation in the industry began to crack. Whispers turned into doubts. Partnerships paused. But she still hadn't shown fear. Not publicly. And that scared me more than anything. Because people like her don't go down quietly. They escalate. And she had one final move left. One that would force me to confront something I wasn't prepared for. Emily didn't call.
She didn't text.
She sent a letter. A physical envelope delivered by courier to my hotel. Inside was a single page. And one sentence that made my hands go numb. You deserve to know the truth about Dad. I stared at those words for a long time. It felt calculated, precise. She knew exactly where to aim. I called my mother immediately. Is there something I don't know about Dad? I asked. Silence. The kind of silence that tells you everything before the words come. Rachel, she whispered. My heart dropped. What? She started crying. I never wanted you to find out like this. Find out what? Find out what? I demanded. Another pause. Your father isn't your biological father. The room tilted. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. What are you talking about? You were 2 when we told him, she said between tears. He chose to stay. He chose to raise you as his own. I felt like I couldn't breathe. So, Emily knew. Yes.
Of course she did.
She found out when she was 16. My mom continued. She overheard us arguing. We begged her not to tell you. And she didn't. She waited. She saved it. Like ammunition. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. Suddenly, so many childhood moments replayed differently in my head. The subtle favoritism. The way relatives would sometimes say I didn't look like the family. The tension I could never explain. Emily had known for almost 20 years. And she used it now. Not out of concern. Not out of sisterhood. But as leverage. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered.
Her voice was calm.
You got the letter. Yes. You deserve to know. I let out a hollow laugh. You think this changes anything? It explains things, she said softly. Explains what? Why Dad always treated you differently. Why Mom overcompensated. Why you were always trying so hard to belong. Her words were knives wrapped in silk. I belonged, I said. You wanted to, she corrected. I closed my eyes. You're cruel. No, she replied. I'm honest.
Honest.
You think this justifies what you did? I asked. I think you've always lived in a fantasy, she said. About family, about loyalty, about fairness. And you haven't.
No, she said.
I learned early that love is conditional. For the first time, I heard something real in her voice. Not arrogance. Not calculation. Bitterness. You think Mom and Dad loved me more, she continued. But they didn't. They just felt guilty. I didn't know what to say. You were the secret, she said quietly. The fragile one. The one everyone protected. That's not true. Isn't it? She shot back. Who got help with college? Who got grandma's inheritance without question? Who got to be the sweet one while I had to be the strong one?
I thought about that.
About how often I was comforted. How often she was expected to handle things. But pain doesn't justify betrayal. You didn't have to destroy me, I said. Her voice hardened again. I didn't destroy you. You're still standing. Yes, I said. And you're about to fall. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised me. I never meant for it to go this far. The affair. The fraud. The lies. It started with business, she continued. Daniel felt unheard. You weren't interested in the company anymore. That doesn't give you the right. I know, she snapped. I know. That was the first crack. The first sign she wasn't entirely made of steel. I was tired of being second, she said more quietly. Second to you in the family. Second to investors in the company. Second to everyone. You were never second to me, I whispered. You didn't see it that way. And maybe that was true. Maybe we had both been living in different versions of the same childhood. But that didn't excuse what she did. I'm not dropping the case, I said firmly. I know, and I'm filing for divorce. Silence. Then softly, I figured. For the first time in this entire nightmare, neither of us sounded angry, just tired. You know what hurts the most? I asked. What? I would have shared everything with you. The company, the money, the life. She let out a shaky breath. That's the difference between us. What difference? You believe in sharing, she said. I believe in securing. The investigation concluded 3 months later. The findings were clear. Forged signatures, unauthorized financial structures, conflict of interest. Emily was formally removed from the company. Criminal charges were negotiated into a civil settlement to avoid a full public trial, mainly to protect the investors. She lost her professional reputation overnight. Daniel settled the divorce quietly. I kept my full ownership. The house was sold, assets divided. He moved out of state within 6 months. We haven't spoken since. As for my father, I went to see him after everything came out. We sat on his porch in silence for a long time. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. He looked at his hands. Because you're my daughter, he said simply. Biology doesn't change that. I cried then, not for the betrayal, not for the marriage, but for the years I spent believing family was unbreakable. It's not. Family is people, and people are flawed. Emily and I don't speak now, not because I hate her, but because I finally understand her. And sometimes understanding someone means accepting they're not safe for you. I rebuilt the company with a new executive team, stronger contracts, clear boundaries, no family involved. And me, I'm not naive anymore, but I'm not bitter either. Because here's what I learned. Betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. It forces you to decide who you are when the illusion is gone. And when everything fell apart, I didn't collapse. I stood up.
Alone.
But stronger than I've ever been.